So a 0-0 scoreboard usually means, well, that nothing happened. You stare at the screen for 90 minutes, the referee blows the final whistle, and the casual fan points to the absolute lack of goals and just assumes it was a total waste of time.
Right, yeah.
But if you look closely at that 2026 World Cup Group L match between England and Ghana at Boston Stadium, that blank scoreboard is actually lying to you. I mean, this game wasn't a dull stalemate. It was like a high-stakes, locked-room mystery.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Yeah, right. All the clues, all the tension, and all the prime suspects were trapped inside that stadium, but nobody managed to find the key to get out.
Exactly. And the tension in a match like this, it comes entirely from the moves that are not made. I mean, we are conditioned to want our sports to be loud, end-to-end action, screaming goals, chaotic defending.
Yeah, we want the highlight reel.
Right. But what unfolded in Boston was this quiet, brutal, and just incredibly calculated grinding war of attrition. It was a tactical chess match where both grandmasters were, frankly, terrified of exposing their king.
Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are unpacking everything you need to know about that historic Group L showdown. Our mission here is to shortcut you past the generic, post-match hot takes and help you become the smartest person in the room about what actually happened on that pitch.
And we have a really fascinating stack of sources to do that today.
We do. We're pulling granular match data from SofaScore, live contextual reporting from the Al Jazeera Live blog, some deep tactical breakdowns of the really controversial lineup decisions, and insights from YouTube analysts, including Ghana legend Asamoah Gyan.
Yeah, and there is also this brilliant meta layer we're weaving into the analysis today. We're actually pulling principles from a guide on how to build a winning sports podcast.
Right, which sounds weird at first.
It does, but understanding the mechanics of how to tell a compelling sports story is actually the perfect lens for decoding a match that, on paper, looks like a complete non-event. If we apply those storytelling principles, the narrative of this game just cracks wide open.
I totally agree. So let's start by looking at the architects of this mystery. Because the defining moments of this match, they didn't happen in the 90th minute. They happened weeks before a single ball was even kicked.
Oh, absolutely.
Thomas Tuchel, the England manager, he makes this tactical shift heading into the tournament that essentially breaks the internet. He actively chose to exclude some of the most technically gifted, world-class creative talents from his squad.
Yeah, the list is staggering.
It really is. I mean, Phil Foden, Cole Palmer, Trent Alexander-Arnold. These are absolute superstars of European football, and Tuchel just left them at home.
Right, and the sheer audacity of that choice really requires us to look at the underlying data. I mean, Tuchel isn't blind to their talent. He knows Alexander-Arnold can land a 50-yard pass on a dime.
Obviously.
But the tactical analysis from our sources highlights this crucial concept of progressive passing metrics. So Alexander-Arnold, for instance, he attempts over 27 forward line-breaking passes per 90 minutes for his club.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is. But because those passes are highly ambitious, he only completes about 67% of them. And Cole Palmer operates with a very similar high-risk, high-reward philosophy.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. If you complete 67% of those aggressive passes, it basically means about 9 times a game, you are handing the ball directly to the opposition.
Exactly.
Now, in a 38-game club season, the math works out in your favor, right?
Yeah.
Because the successful passes result in enough goals to offset those turnovers over a long period.
Yeah, over a whole season, you win that bet. But in a knockout international tournament, one lost ball in transition sends you packing. I mean, you're on the next flight home.
Right.
So Tuchel looked at those turnover metrics and just decided the risk was simply too high. He prioritized structural stability and defensive reliability over creative flair. And that is the exact mechanism behind his selection of players like Morgan Rogers, Noni Madueke, and Gigit Spence.
Because they don't turn the ball over as much?
Exactly. They offer low-risk ball circulation, and they possess the raw athleticism to aggressively track back and defend the very second possession is lost.
But, okay, I have to push back here. If you purposely leave Ural's top creative players at home just for stability, aren't you basically guaranteeing a frustrating stalemate? Like, did Tuchel overthink this? Statistically, where is the line between being stable and just being totally toothless?
Well, that is the ultimate gamble of international football management, isn't it? Tuchel was optimizing for absolute control. He wanted a team that was so compact and defensively responsible that even if they struggled to break an opponent down, they would never, ever be caught out on a counterattack.
So his bet was that defensive perfection would eventually just yield a gritty 1-0 victory.
Precisely. But, Tuchel's obsession with defensive control didn't exist in a vacuum. It collided perfectly with an absolute crisis happening over in the Ghanaian camp.
Oh, man. Yeah, Ghana was dealing with severe pre-tournament volatility. I mean, they fired their head coach, Otto Addo, just 2 months before the World Cup.
Yeah, 70 days.
You are 70 days away from the biggest stage in global sports. The pressure is immense, and you bring in Carlos Queiroz.
Right, and Carlos Queiroz is like the definition of a pragmatic specialist. I mean, this is his 5th consecutive international tournament. He famously navigated Iran through 3 separate World Cups.
He knows how to survive.
Exactly. He is universally known for a rigid, uncompromising, defense-first philosophy. So stepping into a chaotic situation with just 70 days to evaluate a roster, he was never going to implement some expansive, flowing style of play. He was going to build a fortress.
And that fortress mentality became completely non-negotiable when Ghana suffered that massive injury blow right before the tournament started. They lost Mohamed Kudus, their star playmaker.
Huge loss.
The guy who provides the spark, who can beat 2 men and change the whole geometry of an attack. Without him, Queiroz essentially had no choice but to lean entirely into a highly disciplined, deeply compact 4-5-1 formation.
Yeah, and for you listening, a 4-5-1 bunker is essentially a mechanism designed to just choke the life out of a game. You drop your entire midfield deep, incredibly close to your defensive line.
Right, which erases all that space between the lines where creative players usually operate.
Exactly. Queiroz knew Ghana wasn't going to try and outpass England. The strategy was to outsuffer them. I mean, they were going to absorb pressure, claw at every passing lane, and force England into making a mistake.
So the table is fully set here. You have Tuchel, who is terrified of losing the ball in transition, fielding an ultra-conservative, athletic lineup, and you have Queiroz, stripped of his best attacking player, building an impenetrable defensive bunker.
It's the perfect storm.
It really is. Those 2 managerial gambits directly resulted in a game at Boston Stadium that produced some of the wildest statistical anomalies in World Cup history. Let's look at the raw data from SofaScore. England held 78.8% possession.
I mean, that number is staggering.
It's insane. It is the highest ever possession recorded by an England team in a World Cup match. And furthermore, Al Jazeera's live reporting noted that it is the most possession by any side failing to score in the entire history of the tournament.
Wow.
And the passing numbers are just as absurd. England completed 579 accurate passes. Ghana completed just 128. England registered 19 shots. Ghana managed 2.
Yeah, and when you hear 78.8% possession and 579 passes, it sounds like absolute dominance, right? It sounds like England was just tearing Ghana apart.
Right, it sounds like a bloodbath.
But this is where we really have to explain the tactical geometry of what was actually happening on the pitch. When a team sits in a deep 4-5-1 block, they essentially surrender the perimeter of the field. They pack the center so tightly that the attacking team is forced to just pass the ball in a massive U-shape.
Like from the left back to the center backs to the right back and then just back again.
Exactly, which completely explains the most revealing statistic of the entire match. Mark Gay, England's center back, was the highest-rated player on the pitch with an 8.3 rating. He completed 126 successful passes, which actually set a World Cup record for an England player.
Okay, wait. A central defender breaking passing records in a game where his team had almost 80% of the ball. That tells you everything you need to know about the effectiveness of Ghana's structure.
It really does. Gehi and his center back partner, Ezri Konsa, they weren't carving open the defense. They were simply recycling the ball harmlessly near midfield, just probing for gaps that Queiroz's system outright refused to open.
And Gehi was also fouled 7 times, which is another World Cup record for a defender. So Ghana was engaging just enough to disrupt the rhythm, but never really overcommitting.
Exactly.
It's like trying to pick a lock by just hitting it with a hammer. I mean, England had all this possession, they made a ton of noise, they exerted a massive amount of physical effort, but they weren't actually manipulating the internal tumblers of Ghana's defense. They were just banging on the outside of the door, hoping the sheer force of the statistics would eventually break it down.
Yeah, and the structural integrity of that Ghanaian door deserves immense credit. The defensive masterclass was executed perfectly at an individual level. You look at Gideon Mensah operating on the flank, he recorded 9 clearances on his own. He was just constantly sweeping away danger.
And in the center of the park, Thomas Partey was an absolute wall. He went 4 for 4 in crucial midfield tackles, just breaking up any momentum England tried to build centrally.
He was massive. And on the rare occasions when England's hammer did manage to chip the paint, Benjamin Assar was there. The Ghanaian goalkeeper made 3 vital saves. Now, the analytics evaluate those saves as preventing 0.34 expected goals.
Right, and for you listening, think of expected goals, or XG as we call it, as like a historical probability. Based on thousands of past matches, it calculates how often an average player would score from that exact location under that exact pressure.
So preventing 0.34 XG might not sound like a massive number, but in a game decided by microscopic margins, it represents absolute perfection from your keeper.
Totally. And Asamoah Gyan, the legendary Ghanaian striker whose World Cup heroics are basically etched in history, he took to his YouTube channel, Sports7GH, to break down the psychological impact of this exact performance.
Yeah, he specifically highlighted Assar's composure and the backline's overall resilience. He even compared this really gritty survivalist mentality to Ghana's famous 2010 World Cup run.
And that 2010 run was completely defined by backs-to-the-wall defending and just sheer willpower. Gyan pointed out that surviving 90 minutes against a tournament favorite under those circumstances, it doesn't just earn you a point in the Group L standings, it builds this impenetrable layer of squad belief. You start to realize that no matter how much possession the opponent has, they cannot break you.
But, the flip side of that Ghanaian triumph is the deep frustration in the English camp. And this brings us back to the what-ifs. Since the hammer approach didn't work, we really have to evaluate the tools to go deliberately left back in the shed.
Right. So here's where it gets really interesting. With Reece James and D-Jet Spence offering defensive security, did England actually miss Trent Alexander-Arnold's passing? Or did the attackers, like Harry Kane, who had a really off day, simply fail to execute the final shot?
I mean, that is the defining debate for English football right now. To understand it, we have to look at defensive metrics. We mentioned earlier that Alexander-Arnold takes creative risks. Defensively, he has a 55.3% dual success rate.
Okay.
Contrast that with D-Jet Spence, the man Tuchel trusted to lock down the flank. Over his club season, Spence engaged in a massive 257 defensive duels and recorded 176 interceptions.
Wow. Which means Tuchel got exactly what he paid for. By starting Spence and Reece James, England completely neutralized Ghana in transition. For the first 80 minutes, Ghana hardly crossed the halfway line with any genuine threat. The defensive stability Tuchel craves was absolutely achieved.
Yeah, but the cost of that stability is a severe lack of imagination in the final third. Without elite creators threading the needle, England had to rely on brute force and crosses. They did create 2 big chances, but the finishing was just agonizingly poor.
Yeah, Harry Kane, a striker who has literally built a career on ruthless efficiency, he had a remarkably off day.
The underlying numbers on Kane's performance are fascinating. He accumulated an expected goals of 0.45 across his 3 shots.
So again, looking at that historical probability, a striker of his caliber in those positions is expected to find the back of the net roughly half the time.
Right, and the climax of that frustration arrived in the 87th minute. The late game drama was just incredible.
It was the one moment where the lock almost snapped open. England finally strung together a flowing, synchronized move. Reece James delivers a pinpoint cross, and substitute Nico O'Reilly attacked it with a powerful header that smashes against the underside of the crossbar.
The stadium basically holds its breath. The ball drops straight down into the penalty area, and it lands right at the feet of Harry Kane.
The exact player in the exact spot you would want to decide a World Cup match. And he blasts the rebound high into the Boston sky. It was a massive let-off for Ghana.
And this is where the dynamic of a 0-0 game suddenly shifts. When a team like England misses a golden opportunity in the 87th minute, they tend to overcommit. Desperation sets in. They throw more bodies forward, trying to force the victory.
And that is exactly the trap a 4-5-1 bunker is designed to spring, isn't it?
Exactly. Ghana had been compressing the spring for 85 minutes, absorbing all that pressure, just waiting for England to leave space behind their defensive line.
And the spring finally uncoiled. Antoine Semenyo's pace had been vital all game for providing brief moments of relief, but the real heart-stopping sequence came through substitute Prince Kwabena Adu. He gets sent clean through on a rapid counterattack against a suddenly exposed English defense.
The analytics highlight just how dangerous this moment was. Adu generates a 0.24 expected goals chance. In the context of a game where space has been entirely non-existent, a clear sight of goal with a 1 in 4 historical probability of scoring is practically a penalty kick.
Right. But the tactical safety net Tuchel designed ultimately saved him. Ezri Konsa utilizes his recovery pace to close down the angle just enough to disrupt a deuce strike.
It was a brilliant recovery.
And even when Antoine Semenyo follows up on the loose ball, Ghanaian defender Kojo Pepra Opong, who had pushed all the way up in the chaos, sees his heroic attempt blocked right on the goal line.
That sequence perfectly illustrates the razor-thin margins of tournament football. I mean, England dictates the terms of engagement for 85 minutes, but one swift counterattack almost ruins their entire World Cup campaign. It validates Tuchel's obsession with transitional defense, while simultaneously validating Queiro's patience.
And the post-match press conferences gave us a front-row seat to the psychological divide between the two camps. Two managers looking at the exact same 0-0 scoreboard, but experiencing completely different realities. You have Thomas Tuchel on international television sounding thoroughly exasperated, asking, "How did we not score? If it was going to fall to anyone, it should have been Harry."
Contrast that with Jordan Ayew, the Ghanaian captain. He was completely serene. He told reporters, "We stayed humble and defended well. I think our game plan worked."
For Ghana, the 0 on the scoreboard was a masterpiece. For England, it was an indictment.
Absolutely. And, there's a fascinating layer to all this about how we consume sports media, which ties into the final source in our stack today.
Yeah, the one that isn't actually about football at all.
Right. It's a guide from Podcast Wizardry on creating a winning sports podcast. If we were just hot take artists on a daily sports radio show, we would look at the 0-0 draw, scream about how Harry Kane is washed up, demand Tuchel be fired for leaving Foden at home, and just call the match a boring disaster.
Right, which is what a lot of people did. But the guide emphasizes a critical storytelling principle. Find your niche and own it. The hot take market is completely saturated. Our niche today is tactical, data-driven analysis. By treating this match not as a boring stalemate, but as a locked-room mystery dictated by XG, transitional defense, and passing geometry, we actually uncover the real story.
The guide also stresses the importance of sounding like a pro. It specifically recommends investing in high-quality equipment, like the Audio-Technica ATR 2100X microphone.
Okay, but how does that apply to the match?
Well, the underlying message there is that the delivery mechanism has to match the gravity of the subject matter. When you are unpacking the psychological weight of a World Cup tactical battle, the presentation needs to carry that same authority and clarity.
I see. But the most compelling principle from the podcasting guide is this concept of creating evergreen content, content that remains relevant long after the final whistle.
Yes, exactly.
But wait, here's where I really have to push back. Sports are inherently live and reactive. The emotional currency of a World Cup is entirely based on the immediacy of the moment. We are dissecting a specific 0-0 match from June 2026. How do you make that relevant to a listener who might be diving into this topic, say, 6 months or a year from now?
It's a vital question. A match is an event, but a tactic is an evolution. The things we witnessed in this game, Tuchel actively prioritizing athletic transition defenders over pure playmakers, Queiro's perfectly executing a low block to neutralize a statistically superior team, these aren't just isolated events. They represent a shifting philosophy in international football. We might actually be witnessing the death of the luxury creator.
Oh, wow. So analyzing this specific 0-0 game isn't just about figuring out who advances from Group L. It serves as an evergreen masterclass on modern tournament survival. If you understand why Tuchel sacrificed his best passers today, you will instantly understand the defensive structures managers will deploy in the Champions League final 2 years from now.
Precisely. The principles of space manipulation, expected goals, and risk mitigation outlast the specific 90 minutes played in Boston.
Well, let's look at the road ahead for both of these squads. Ghana walked into a matchup against one of the heavy tournament favorites, absorbed a historic amount of pressure, and earned a vital point through pure resilience and structural discipline. They survived the siege entirely intact.
They did. While England, despite monopolizing the ball and the territory, left frustrated and exhausted, they dominated the metrics but failed the ultimate test of breaking the door down.
Both teams are actually well-positioned as they head into their final Group L games, though. They both sit on 4 points. England is preparing to face Panama, while Ghana is gearing up for Croatia.
And, as Esamo again pointed out in his analysis, that Croatia match is the absolute crux of the tournament for the Black Stars. Securing even a single point in those respective matchups guarantees a spot in the round of 32 for both nations.
But getting out of the group stage doesn't erase the massive questions both managers still face. For Carlos Queiroz, the defensive foundation is rock solid. But what happens when Ghana inevitably falls behind in a knockout match and actually has to chase a game without their primary playmaker? Can his team shift gears and manufacture goals?
That's the million-dollar question. And for Thomas Tuchel, the questions are even louder. Is his absolute pursuit of defensive perfection going to cost England the attacking magic required to actually win a World Cup? I mean, you can survive a group stage with structural rigidity, but lifting the trophy usually requires a moment of transcendent brilliance.
Which brings us to the broader implications for the sport itself. The data clearly shows that international football is becoming more risk-averse.
Definitely.
Which leaves you, our listener, with a final thought to mull over long after this deep dive ends. If the absolute highest levels of football are trending toward this intense, risk-averse defensive solidity where elite managers are actively removing creative playmakers from the pitch just to ensure structural stability, what does the future of the World Cup look like?
It's a fascinating thought.
Will future tournaments be won by the team that creates the most magic or simply the team that makes the fewest mistakes? And as a fan, how will you adapt your expectations to appreciate these grinding, tactical chess matches instead of the high-scoring shootouts we are so used to craving?
The evolution of the game demands an evolution in how we watch it. The drama is no longer just in the goals, it's in the geometry.
It is the ultimate locked room mystery. And maybe the team that eventually lifts the trophy in 2026 won't be the one that tries to force the door open with a hammer. It will be the team that realizes they never needed to open it in the first place, content to let the opposition tire themselves out, banging on the outside. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the tactics, the data, and the storytelling of the World Cup. Keep questioning the scoreline, look past the obvious, and keep learning.